So I'm sorry about that, but this presentation will be about integration between two worldwide famous products, Progress software, everybody knows that, and Splunk. There's something like obligatory slide, which is something about me. Everyone can read it. It's not about the work only, it's also about some hobbies. But let's start. First of all, we can ask, whose progress? That's a classic question, but I suppose that everybody knows that. Everybody who is sitting here knows what progress is. If not, that's probably in a wrong venue. What about Splunk? Who has heard about Splunk? No one? Yeah. Yeah. Splunk is a tool which lets you observe your total IT infrastructure. I would call it IT cloud. Not only your IT infrastructure, but also your own IT infrastructure, but also the infrastructure of your customers, if you are allowed to do that, of the internet, of all the network. And especially it's an integration tool which allows you to gather information from all the IT cloud you have. Which kind of information is mostly interesting with Splunk? It's about performance, security, and availability. But you can choose another topic, but we have been doing it's mostly about these topics. Unfortunately, at this moment, there is no official support for Splunk from Progress. It's not my sentence. I didn't, I wrote it only. I copied it from Progress knowledge base. So why Splunk? What's Splunk for me? It is because I had a customer, it was a non-Progress customer, who was using Splunk as a monitoring tool. That's where I learned something about the tool. And then I went back to one of my Progress customers. It's an international corporation which uses Splunk as a global monitoring tool, monitoring and observation tool. And they wanted me to include OpenEdge resources in this kind of monitoring. So that's what I had to do, and I believe that I succeed. Let's look how it works. We have we are not going to talk too much about the world outside OpenEdge. It doesn't mean that Splunk cannot be integrated with some environment which is out of OpenEdge. But it is not the topic, it is not the goal of this presentation. This presentation is focused only on how Splunk can be integrated with OpenEdge. So, what we have in Progress environment? We have something like database log file. That's the first source of information we have. We have passively log files. We also have application log files, and we also have command line utilities. Command line utilities which produce something like standard output. And we can read this standard output from Splunk. We can ingest the data into the Splunk environment, and we can monitor and analyze, these data. What we are not focusing on is operating system resources. It doesn't mean, as I said, it doesn't mean that Splunk does not monitor operating system resources. But it's not the problem of OpenEdge. It's another problem, it's another topic. There are plugins which allow Splunk to monitor VMware, Windows, Linux, whatever you have. On the other side, you have Splunk. Splunk is the gray box at the top. And our goal is to ingest data from the OpenEdge environment you want to monitor into the gray box. There are many ways how to do that. Probably the most basic ways, and we don't have time to talk more about that, is you can read log files, and you can write, and read the information from the log files to the gray box, to Splunk. And you can also read outputs for some scripts and ingest this data, the information to Splunk and process, analyze it in Splunk. There are other options, definitely. For example, Splunk can call REST services. So if your application has some interesting REST services which provide information about the status of your OpenEdge application, you can call these REST services from Splunk and ingest the data in the database. What's the advantage? You can see that OpenEdge is only a small part of your monitoring system. You may have B2B, your customers in systems, which you are allowed to, which you have access to, and you can monitor them. You can have Oracle databases, SQL databases in your company, and everything can ingest data in the same Splunk server, so you can see all the data from all your system on one place. How does it work? The main part of Splunk is indexer. Indexer is the same as the database. Let's call it database. It's Splunk database. It's not a database like OpenEdge database, relational database, or something like that. It's a proprietary structure, and every index, which we will talk about it a little bit later, is a database. Forwarder is a process on the machine where your OpenEdge resources are, and forwarder reads the data you want to ingest into Splunk, processes them to the indexer, to the database, which indexes the database in some structure. That's the background. And on the other hand, you have the search head. In fact, that's your entry point or the user's entry point. It's a web-based user interface, your entry point to the results you want to see, you want to get from the monitored object. So you can have some visual objects, dashboard, and so on. We will see some of them on the next slides. So you can use the web-based user interface of Splunk to define which resources should be monitored. It's a very simple way. The web-based user interface leads you. There are some templates, which lead you through the operation of ingesting data into the Splunk database, and you can define the resources you want to monitor. It's the same user interface which is used to analyze, to see the data, to analyze the data, to see the result, and so on. Then, so the search page, we will see some examples later, but now we are talking about it. So on the search head, you have query engine, where you can write queries which are very much like SQL queries. The syntax is a little bit different, but it's like SQL queries. Then on the search head, you can visualize data into bar charts, line charts, pie charts, or whatever you want. You can create pivot tables and whatever, and many other objects in your interface. You can create dashboards where you can see data from multiple resources to see some correlations between them and so on. You can define and run daily reports, monthly reports, daily reports from the system which you monitor, and you can also define alerts which on if some events occur, some events you are unexpected, or some events which mean some error, so can be fired or can be triggered. And when a trigger an alert is triggered, you can define actions on the trigger. We will talk about it a little bit later. Yes. So, which particular Progress OpenEdge resources can we monitor? Probably the first one is the database log file. Everybody knows the structure, the format of the database log file. There is a slight problem that the traditional format of the database log file is not very useful, is not in general automatically recognized by the indexer. Everything what's in Splunk is mostly based on regular expressions. With regular expressions, you can define the structure of your input data. So if you want to read OpenEdge, Progress OpenEdge database log file, you need to have a special regular expression which can analyze the timestamp. That's the beginning of every entry in the database, or no, every, but almost every entry in the database log file. The timestamp is the most critical information from all resources you are ingested in Splunk, because basically the main index is also the timestamps. How the events, how the lines, how the information comes time by time to the Splunk server. Monitoring PSOE log files is much more easier because it's something like Java-based, and the timestamp is automatically recognized by the indexer. So you don't need to write any regular expression. You can just you can just read the lines from the files directly into the databases, into the indexer. Then what may be interesting for you, I haven't done it, I have no experience with it, but the license file, if you are checking license use, you can also monitor, read the license file. That's the basic. Every OpenEdge application has these files today, but you also have some of them should not be here probably, because, for example, operating system resources and network resources are not a part of OpenEdge. But I mentioned them here because you can also monitor these resources. But you can have REST services, you can on your PSOE server, so users, clients can access your REST services, which generate some log files. You can ingest these log files in Splunk, and you can analyze them then. Or whatever you can generate in your application, you can generate your own log files, which Splunk can read and put in the database. So this is the very basic. This is the very basic option that Splunk ingests lines of data from files, from command line outputs, and so on. It's not the only option. The other option is reading operating system resources on Windows, for example, where there is a direct plugin, Windows plugin to Splunk, which can directly read operating system resources. But we will, on this short presentation, we will focus just on this very simple way. So how we do that? What can we do with that? In the next part, we will show some scenarios which may be interesting for you. The first scenario is the database online? That's probably something what everyone is interested in. Is the database online? I was thinking about how to find it, how to do that. And the best way I have found was to use a simple Linux script, because our databases are running on Linux, to use a simple Linux script using dbman to get some information about the database. This simple script produces some output to standard input. And I define in Splunk that this script is triggered in regular intervals, in my case, about every 2 minutes, and I read the output to the indexer, to the database. And then, there's the other line, I have a simple query on the search head, which shows me whether the database running on, there should be 0 instead of asterisk, I'm sorry about that, but whether the database UF on server SLAP 028 is running. That's how I analyze the input line from the output. Everyone, if you come home, you can write this kind of script. You can see the output, and you will see all the information which is in the search. You will see on the output. As you can see, there are two, I would say, essential parameters in the query. It's the index name, as I said before. An index is a database in Splunk terminology. So which database I am looking to? This is my database. I created the database using the configuration files. And which source type? In this way, I have defined a epoch source file for this kind of information. And for the source type, we have exactly the information how to extract data from the line. So for the specific source type, we know how to extract timestamp, how to extract database name, how to extract the name of the monitor, and how to extract the information whether the database is running or not. The other one is about PSOE. I use the same approach, only instead of the dbman utility, I used the tcman utility. I don't know why. There are more of them you can use, definitely. But I started with this one, and it gave me some good results. And also, so you can see that the script is pretty much the same. I have only changed the name of the script. The output is different. And I have a simple query which can tell me whether the PSOE server is up and running. In fact, this means if you run this utility, it gives you the list of processes which are run by this PSOE server. And if it's not running, then it returns 0. So you can see that I search for 0. And if there is a 0 in the output, then I say it's not running. Is it clear? We have 12 more minutes, so I think we have to a little bit speed up. So it's about simple queries. We are not going to show you, I am not going to show any more examples of the code. It was just to give you some brief information how to do that. So the other topic, how you can use how you can use Splunk is security. You can read the dblog file to search, to look for the login section of your dblog file to see if someone tries to connect to the database 20 times, 200 times per second. It is something more suspicious. So you would probably want to do something with that. The same is someone entered 50 wrong passwords. Some user entered 50 wrong passwords. You want to do something with that. Or you can have some DDoS threat. Everybody's trying to reach your database, connecting without whatever. So this is something what you can check. The other scenario we were talking about is performance monitoring. This is typical. If someone is calling a REST service from somewhere, then you can see what's the duration, what's the response time on the PUG server. It's very important because, as I said, OpenEdge resources are not the only resources monitored by Splunk. So you can monitor, if you are allowed to do that, you can monitor all the way from the initiator of the REST request to the PUG server. And if your customer calls, hi, my request takes 10 seconds, you can look at Splunk, you can see, yes, his request takes 10 seconds, but PUG, it's just a fraction of a second. So it's not a PUG, it's not an OpenEdge problem. It must be somewhere in between. And if we monitor all the way between the initiator and PUG server, then you can find, hey, it's 9 seconds here and fractions of seconds here. So there is some problem. So this is the way you can identify where your problem is in your, as I said before, IT cloud. All the infrastructure you have. You can monitor if you have the standard, that's what we are doing, if we have error in the database log file or system error in the database log file. Your application can also generate, I am moving from where I knew where to, I'm sorry, I'm used to walking. Your application can generate your own log files where you want to put some error if some error occur. So you want to generate and see and watch for the errors, monitor the errors. The application is your application is generated. You can check whether your REST services are available by pinging them. Do they respond or not? And you can also look for some correlations of the events occurring. If something goes, if the response time is very, very slow, what happens here? For example, you have an Oracle database somewhere which does some very, very huge processing during the night or even during the day, I don't know. And it consumes a lot of network traffic. And suddenly, for no reason, the performance of your application, of your open application goes down. So we can see, hey, Oracle is running and my performance is very, very poor. So you can see the correlation between events which occur on your, as I said, I don't know if it's a correct expression, in your IT cloud. Okay, that was about what you can do with Splunk. Now I can show you, it is the very last part of my presentation, and I can show you some of the Splunk screenshots. As I said, it all runs in a web browser. Oh, I'm sorry. It all runs in web browser, and the screen is divided into 3 panels. The upper panel, it's the search panel, the variable panel, which is the left one, and the result panel, when you can see the results of your queries. And also on the top you have some menus. These menus you use if you can choose another application in Splunk, if you can define variables, if you can define new inputs and so on. That's all the stuff which unfortunately is out of scope of this presentation. Well, in the search panel, you just enter your queries. It's a simple query where I can see all the information, all the messages from my index for a particular host. Then you can go to the command line, and you can specify by filtering a little bit more. What's very important here, I haven't shown it before, that here in the upper right corner, you can read last 30 minutes. That's the interval the search will be performed on. And you can change it. You can change it from all time to fractions of seconds if you want. You can define intervals last week or the second last week and so on. And you get results based on these timestamps. That's the filtering on the timestamps, which are, I have no pointer, but you can see it here. There's the timestamp. On the left side, you have variables. Splunk has some embedded features how to recognize some variables in your inputs. If you generate inputs which meet this criteria, then it's very easy to analyze the data. For example, there is you can see in the fields, you can see is the force from the top host. It automatically assigns host, and you don't need to do anything. Also, duration is automatically, if you keep some syntax in your log files, then Splunk automatically recognizes duration, so you can measure response time, and you don't need to do anything. But if the output, if you cannot influence the format of the output, or if it is more complicated, then you can define your own variables. You can see first bit, duration rest, star engine database, and so on, using regular expressions. So you analyze the lines, and you extract variables from these lines, and these variables can be then used for searching. We have 2 more minutes, so only very briefly. You can define alerts. Alerts are searches, are queries, which, if they satisfy some criteria, fire or trigger a response. A response can be email, SMS, webhook, action, process, you can run process. So if some event occurs, for example, unauthorized access, it automatically generates an error, an alert, which can be delivered to your mobile phone, and you can take some actions there. Or automatic script can block that user, or can block the system completely. You have also reports. It's very simple. You just take the query you saw, and you put it in, you run it in regular intervals, and put the results in a report. It's nothing complicated. And then you have visualization. So this is some of the examples. Managers like it. They see if the circle turns red, the manager can pick up the phone and say, something is not running, do something with that. Yeah, so these are the on-off Boolean buttons. It's on-off. If PSOE server is off, then it turns red. Then, in the upper left corner, you have response time distribution during the last 6 hours. So you can see how much requests were answered in some period of interval. And we can see it in more detail here. So these are the buttons. Here you can see the distribution. And here are some non-progress, you can see that there is a non-OpenEdge resource monitor. There's a CPU utilization. You can see it's an HCPU machine. And you can see how the CPU utilization during the time. I think it is last 6 hours also. It's even written there. And you can also see, we can measure Azure. It's also, the lower one is also non-progress. It does not measure duration of a REST request on the PSOE server, which is another chart, but this measures a request on the Azure endpoint. So we have 2 graphs, one for the PSOE OE ping, how the duration, what's the response time on the PSOE server, and then we have a chart what the response time is on the Azure server. And if it's very, very different, we can say that the problem is on Azure or the network in between. If it is pretty much the same, other results are not good, then we have to say, unfortunately, we have a problem in PSOE server, we have to do something with that. Okay? So, as far as I remember, I don't remember almost, but our time is off. Maybe one question, or you may have some questions outside. There is a question.
I think yesterday Oleg, or was it John, mentioned a couple of times OpenTelemetry. So they are going to add that to PSOE, and then Splunk is going to automatically support or be supported.
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to. The answer is if progress includes automatic telemetry in the product, whether Splunk can be automatically integrated with OpenTelemetry, whether Splunk can be automatically integrated with Progress OpenEdge. I'm sorry, I don't know.
We don't have any other questions, then thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you for your attention.